See, now this is exactly how the Terminators take over. Like, you realize this is Skynet. It's like, you might as well have said,
so you don't have one of these on your house?
No, but it's not because I'm philosophically opposed to it necessarily.
We just have come over and put one in your house.
Such a small house that it's like, I don't know. It doesn't take much to cool it down, and then we turn it off.
But you also probably have more people in and out.
True.
The day, whereas I'm like
mostly out.
I did it yesterday, and I was gone for 12 or 13 hours. So I'm running the error of that. Hello. And then I get home, and I'm like, oh, it's too cold in here.
Wait, though. Okay, so, because I grew up in Arizona, and I love me some air conditioning. On a hot day like today, doesn't it feel great to open that door and feel that awesome air conditioning?
Except for the temperature it's set on when I'm sleeping is too cold to me when you're just around. So I immediately come in and turn it up.
Okay. Well, clearly you have more
problems.
issues than we can accomplish in this pre-show conversation. So you ready to start?
I am.
All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Big Idea Podcast. My name is Eric Bramlett, and I am joined by
Tammy Melchien.
How you doing today, Tammy?
Good. For some reason, it feels like a really long time since we've done this. Why is that?
I don't know, because it probably hasn't been a really long time.
It's not feeling that way to you?
I mean, I don't have a very good memory.
Okay.
Let's take a guess right now.
Maybe I just enjoy it more
because I probably posted it immediately. So, what's your guess for when we recorded last?
Feels like a month ago. That's what it feels to me.
So it feels like August 5th. Today is September 5th. Yeah.
We could probably figure this out later.
No. This is really important.
Why don't you look while I explain?
Perfect.
So that we don't keep them waiting.
We don't want to keep them waiting. We are in a series called Turn the Page. It is a dance remix series. There's a lot going on, and it takes place over the course of 12 weeks or so.
11 weeks with a bonus of Christmas Eve.
So we are currently talking about what we're calling Part 2, which is weeks 5 through 8.
Yes.
So remind us a little bit, just kind of overall, how are we treating Turn the Page? What is it? What are its goals? What are we trying to accomplish?
Okay, so we are trying to accomplish an overview of the whole narrative of the Bible, of the story of God and his people. And the purpose of that is to, in some ways, demystify the Bible. So many people are intimidated by the Bible. They don't know where to start. They feel like they won't be able to understand it. And so during the series, we want to kind of help them understand the big picture view of the Bible so they feel confident in engaging it on their own, reading, reflecting on it. And so we're going to have an overview component to this. It'll happen each week of the series, but also in a Monday through Friday experience that provides that overview. And then we will also have each week turn the page, the phrase meaning an idiom, to have a fresh start. So each page we're talking about having a fresh start in our lives in some way.
Gotcha. It has been 28 days. It has been pretty much exactly
4 weeks.
Yeah, 4 weeks. So
I knew I was feeling it.
You are not wrong.
Which I don't know if we ever do them more frequent than that, but it just has felt like a long time.
Well,
a lot's happened.
Here we are. That's the most important part. And week 5 kicks off with kind of going from this to this, and we're moving from avoided to anointed. So tell us a little bit about where we are in the Bible and where we're headed for this week.
Where we are in the Bible is we have finished the whole Genesis and the Exodus, and we've come to this place where we are ready for the kingdoms part of the Bible. And what we mean by kingdoms is when Israel asks for a king, and so then God gives them a king. The first king being Saul, the second king second king David. And so today we are looking at a story about David. And so the story we're going to look at is where Samuel actually anoints David king. And one of the tricky things about that is he anoints David king while Saul is still king.
So that could be a problem.
Could be a problem. Not going to be a smooth transfer of power.
Right.
But the key thing that we're going to look, so we're going to look at this story, and the key part that we're doing this week for the Turn the Page, Fresh New Start part of it is one of the things that happens in this story is God tells Samuel, go to this particular family. That's where the next king is. Like, that's who I've chosen. And so he goes and he sees all these, strong looking, handsome, men, and he thinks the oldest must be the guy and all that, and God's like, nope, 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 nope. And it turns out that the one that was going to be anointed king was just a young.
He wasn't even there.
No, he wasn't even there at that time, because he was probably just a young teenager, and he's out in the field tending sheep.
Right.
And what God says to Samuel during this is, you shouldn't consider appearance or height, because God doesn't look at the things that people look at. God looks at the heart. Mm. And if you know anything about David, David went on to be called a man after God's own heart. And so we're going to use that story this week to challenge one another of how we really view other people. And so, so many times we just maybe kind of avoid certain people, or don't give people the time of day.
Yeah, we make assumptions.
Yeah, we make assumptions based on whatever, criteria we choose, and we do it without even recognizing it half of the time. But what might it be, and this is an interesting, we would never really say it this way, but what might it mean to see people as anointed? As anointed. In the map we say there, what we're talking about, that is like, you look at someone and you recognize the image of God in them, that you like intentionally choose to believe the best about their heart, that you recognize, that person, because they're creating the image of God, that there's a purpose for their life. And what if we began to really look at one another that way, and to treat one another that way? And so really turning the page in this is to, like, how do I begin to really see people, every person that I come across, as God sees them?
I like that. That's very, very cool. Yeah, because I think, with David, we tend to we get the whole king thing, and we think that it's really just so super unique to a particular, like, not attainable, and I think this kind of flips it and makes it, again, kind of about the other.
Yeah.
What does it look like for us to think of the other that way, instead of really kind of focusing on where do I fit into the story?
Yeah.
It's a great challenge in terms of where do they fit in the story. Very good. All right. So then that takes us then to the next week, and we continue in the story. We turn the page and we go from captive to courageous.
Yes. So in the story of the Bible, where we're at here, is you have this period of the kingdoms where you have, Saul, David, and Solomon, and this united Israel. Well, after Solomon's death, the kingdom of Israel, the nation of Israel, actually divides, and it breaks up into what is a northern kingdom and a southern kingdom. And sometimes when you're reading the scripture, you'll see that it talks about, like, the northern tribes. So 10 of the tribes made up the northern kingdom, 2 of the tribes made up the southern. And then what happens in the story of the Bible is eventually, both of these, the southern kingdom has a few good kings, but most of them are evil. The northern kings are all evil, don't follow God. And so eventually what happens is God allows both kingdoms to be conquered by foreign empires. And the northern kingdom is pretty much completely destroyed, and the southern kingdom, some of the people from the southern kingdom are carried off into exile. And so we enter into a part in the biblical history that covers books like Daniel and Ezra and Nehemiah and Esther, and then some of the prophets that we'll get to later, that cover this period of both the exile and the return. Okay, so that's the overview of what we're looking at there. And so the story we're going to focus in on is one of the great, if you grew up in Sunday school, man, you can see the flannel graph in your mind.
Yeah.
It's Daniel in the lion's den. And this is so while Daniel is living in exile, and this story about how he really faces this test of, will he stay faithful to God when his culture is trying to shape him in a different way? And spoiler alert, he does stay faithful. And
I know, yeah.
God rescues him from really what was a capital punishment attempt
yeah.
on his life.
Yeah.
And so for us to look at this, and most of us probably don't have execution lingering over our heads.
No.
I don't think that's ever happened to me.
No.
But we all kind of face these pressures, whether we realize them or not, to conform to our culture. And so what does it look like in places where that is in opposition to who God calls us to be as the people of God? In places where that is clashing, what does it look like for us to be courageous and to not give in to that, but instead to have the integrity to do what is right, to do what God calls us to do?
That's interesting, because I feel like that topic kind of has pendulum swings, where I think like maybe something that's perceived as a more conservative, kind of traditional church expression might be like really, really associated with this message, to the point of like like not willing to be defined by the culture, that you're not actually engaging in it. And then you might have like the other pendulum swing where it's like you're so clearly connected to the culture that you don't have any like identifying principles as being separated from it. I mean, how is this talk? I mean, do you get the sense that we're not necessarily going to be dealing with those pendulums as much as we are just kind of acknowledging, hey, culture plays a role.
Yeah, well, we may name that because the beautiful thing about Daniel's life is he found this way to live kind of in the tension of that. Because understand, Daniel was, he was an official in the king of Babylon's, like he was an administrator. He was moving up, in essence, the corporate ladder. So he was very much engaged in the culture there in this foreign land that he found himself in. But also, even when this edict comes out, that some people who are jealous of Daniel, they intend to trap him by this, and they say, no one is allowed for the next 30 days to pray to anybody except to the king. Okay, what Daniel does is he doesn't go out and scream for his rights. He doesn't like what he does is he goes home. He does what he always did. He goes home. He goes up into his upper room, and where he always sat in front of the windows, he prays to God. And so I love that, because it's like he had his identity built in, first and foremost, I am a follower of God. And so I continue to do what that means. And, he wasn't in your face with anybody about that, but he wasn't backing down when something threatened that.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And then I think the other thing that's great about that is it kind of doesn't even really then matter what the result is as it relates to the Lions, because he's already developed a life of integrity. It didn't matter to him if God saved him or not. I think. But I mean, obviously, he preferred to live.
I mean, it's a very similar story from the chapter before Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they actually say our God is able to save us, but even if He doesn't,
right.
Yeah. So the consequence isn't really of concern. It's about faithfulness to who God calls us to be.
But of course, it's great that when he was saved, that the credit and the glory and the honor goes to God.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good story. I could stay there for a while.
It is.
That's fun. All right, so then we're into week 7, and this is from ruined to restored.
Yes, and we are now into December, so from an arts perspective and all that, we're imagining that this is the transition week where the
things get shaded a little bit like
Christmas colory
sure.
looking.
Yeah, right. But still within the construct of
turn the page.
Yeah. Got it.
So the big idea, turn the page by helping to restore God's dream for the world. We felt like that was a good direction, ruined to restored, to take, because this week we're going to focus on the prophets. And so the overview is about the prophets. Now, there are prophets who appear in some of the earlier periods that we did, but then there's also, the prophetic books of the Bible.
Gotcha.
The major prophets, the minor prophets. You know the difference between the major and minor?
Well, one sounds really happy and the other sounds really sad.
That is true. But the funny thing is it's based on the length of the book.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You're a major prophet if you wrote a lot. And you're
verbose,
a minor prophet if you did not. So it has nothing about the importance. It's about the length of the book, and that's the way they're organized in the Bible.
So Facebook major, Twitter minor.
There you go.
Okay,
good analogy.
Yep.
So
I'm really good at those.
One of the things that we see in the prophets too is a lot of times they will there are prophecies about Jesus, like so many prophecies that you see that came true and became fulfilled in Jesus. And so one of them in Isaiah 61 is where it starts out, the Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me. The Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor, to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives. It's a very restore-oriented passage.
And Jesus quotes that later, right? Oh, sorry, spoiler
alert. Look at you. Yes.
I totally knew that from a different talk. Probably.
That is the very passage that in Luke 4, then, Jesus sits down in the synagogue and reads, and he says, today this has been fulfilled in your presence. So in this message, I think we probably do a little bit, just a little more in the actual teaching overview of prophet, because people don't really understand what is a prophet, what is, so we may do some of that in this one. But we want to look at this as how, what Jesus was saying is this prophecy about me that was really about restoring God's dream for the world that I am now here to fulfill. Then he also invites us to join him in that and to partner.
Yeah, that was my question. It's like, how do we take what happens with prophecy or with the prophets and apply it to us? What's our role in this? And it has to do with joining God in his mission. Yeah,
joining Jesus in that. And since this is December 2nd, it felt, as we were planning this map, as a perfect time to really put the last press on with Gift Mart.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And so we're probably going to make the takeaway. We're working with Amy Plummer a little bit, so keep just wait for details on that, because we would love to figure out a way to have people respond in that moment. And I don't know what she's working on, but one of the things we had been brainstorming a little bit is like, could you make a giant Amazon wish list and in the service have people just go ahead and buy your gift right there, and they're all sent to the LOX. So we're gonna the tricky thing with that is holiday time shipping times if people don't have Prime. So we're trying to figure out if that can work, or what could work to be possible for that.
Gotcha. Very cool. All right, that's exciting. All right, and so then this season of planning wraps up with moving from waiting to wonder.
And we are in the New Testament.
Yay! Woo-hoo! We made it, everybody. We made it through the Old Testament, the whole Old Testament in just 7 short weeks. How did we do it? Here we are in week 8. And
so week 8, 9, and 10, the overview part, because this is Christmas, we are really going to focus on the Gospels and on the story of Jesus. And so I'll give you a broad overview of all 3, and then we'll look at this one, because when we started thinking about that, yes, we want to focus on the Christmas story because it's Christmas, but we also want it to be broader than that because of this overview. We want people to understand, the life of Jesus and what is in the Gospels. And so one of the things I remember, if you guys were at Exponential with us a few years ago when Dave's pastor friends from Norway were talking, they talked about, as they studied the Gospels, they noticed that there were 3 things that really drew people to Jesus, 3 things that made him so effective in helping people find their way back to God. And they said it was his miracles, like the things that he did. It was his words, the things that he taught. They'd never heard anyone speak that way before. And the third thing they say is his goodness, his love, the way that he loved people. And so kind of thought about that and thought, you know what, let's shape these 3 weeks to highlight those. Okay. So both in the reading plan and in what we're doing on Sundays. But also they each have a connection back to, we see this all the way back in the Christmas story.
Yeah, with the Christmas story.
Yeah. So for example, week 8 here is when we're going to focus on what he did, on the miracles, the wonders he did. And so, you come to the Christmas story in, where are we, in Luke 2 right here, just the miracle of his birth. And I know I put the whole thing in here. We may not do much on the shepherds this first week because we're going to do the shepherds in a couple weeks.
Gotcha.
So it's just the whole, this wonder of, you had this virgin who, comes with child, just
least
kind of
likely to be pregnant.
Just this, the wonder of God breaking into our world in this way. And so, we'll probably spend some time in this message drawing the connection from the Old Testament to, when the Old Testament ends, there's 400 years of silence before God breaks in to the world in the person of Jesus. And so, the people, they had been waiting a long, long time, and it seemed like nothing was happening. It seemed like God was silent. It seemed like he had abandoned them. But after all that waiting, this wonder just breaks in to the world. And so, but then to see how this miracle of his birth was just the beginning. I mean, the truth is that everything that Jesus did caused people to wonder, and you can see that over and over again with the miracles he performed, with the
healings,
just all of that stuff. And so, the encouragement for us in this first week is that even though sometimes it feels like we've been in a dark time, in a time of waiting, in a time where maybe it even feels like God has been silent, to realize that Jesus still wants to break into our world with wonder today. And so I put in here, this could be a good message to have a video story. And maybe even, I know we've had some recent stories of some like kind of miracle type things. I mean, maybe we want to even consider that. And so, you know, I think like this could be a week where we just really encourage one another to ask God to continue to break into our world with wonders and miracles.
No, that's great. And I really like the way that you're talking about kind of letting the Christmassy thing kind of be there, but then also kind of allowing for, through these three ways of Jesus, to be able to kind of get to the entire Gospels.
The Gospels, yeah.
Yeah, because that, and this is another great reminder too. I mean, we'll have lots of reminders all along the way of the added kind of bonus materials that we're encouraging people to do in terms of the reading and the podcasts, and, you know, just that you know, just, and we didn't mention this at the top, but, you know, it's just remembering that, like, our Sunday morning takes this, like, let's take a laser eye at one particular story, but we are encouraging everyone to get on board with this notion of going with us, turning the page, you know, through the entire course of the Bible. So it's pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, that'd be good.
All right. So that covers part 2. And so I guess I'll see you in 4 weeks. Maybe sooner. Who knows? Who knows? We'll see.
I'm going to finish this map next week, so I'm sure Sherry will be like...
Yeah. Let's get that on the calendar. That's exciting.
Sherry always does that in a very
wouldn't
nice
have
way.
it any other way because Sherry's awesome.
She is.
All right, so Turn the Page Part 2 in the can. Thank you so much for joining us. Brainstorm lots of really cool ways to shape services and encourage our attenders in lots of ways. I have been Eric Bramlett with Tammy Melchien. This has been the Big Idea Podcast. So long, everybody.